I'm Jack McDougall and President and CEO of the Greater Washington Board of Trade. Thank you for taking the time to join today's regional policy leadership discussion. This is a forum where we connect elected and agency officials and leaders with our members and the broader business community to talk about key policy and legislative issues. Earlier this year, we were pleased to host discussions with Governor Moore, Governor Youngkin, and many others. And then later this month on October 24th, we'll talk with the Senate presidents from Maryland and Virginia. So please tune in for that. Today's event is presented by First National Bank, and it's supported by Comcast, Fox Rothschild, GS Proctor & Associates, Giant Food, Holland & Knight, McGuire Woods Consulting, MGM National Harbor, and Uber. So I want to thank all of you for your support in making this happen. I'm sure as with most of you, rarely do I attend a meeting where talent and workforce aren't really key topics of conversation. So we're especially pleased to be here today with the region's leading labor and workforce officials. So thank you for joining us. Secretary Wu from Maryland, Secretary Slater from Virginia, and Director Morris-Hughes from DC. So I appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with us and the business community. I also want to thank Mac Tisdale, the Market President for the Mid-Atlantic region at First National Bank. He's going to moderate our discussion today. And with that, Mac, I will turn it over to you.
Jack, thanks for the opportunity. I'm real excited about this program today, and I guess I can officially say good afternoon, everyone. I'm the region president for the Mid-Atlantic at First National Bank. So for us, that's Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And, I think about my travels. I spent the day yesterday in the district downtown with clients and other folks, went to my home in Baltimore to sleep, and then got up this morning at dark 100 to drive down to Richmond. So I have a healthy perspective on each of these three jurisdictions. As similar as they are, there's also a lot of key and unique differences as well, and I think we'll sort of talk about those as we go throughout the day. Each of these folks that are on the panel, they have different respective positions and responsibilities in each of their offices and departments. So I think we probably make sense to lead off and ask each of them to describe their particular role and their seat. And so, Secretary Wu, I'll start with you.
Thanks. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Mac. So hi there, everyone. I'm Portia Wu at the Maryland Department of Labor. I will say until recently, we were called Labor Licensing and Regulation, and there's a reason for that is because at the department, in addition to regulating typical, wage and hour, unemployment insurance, and health and safety, we also have occupational and professional licensing, financial regulation, which includes our state chartered banks and credit unions, as well as soon to have family and medical leave, and of course, the important workforce and talent program. So that's where we are in Maryland.
Thank you. Director Morris-Hughes.
Good morning. So my name is Dr. Morris-Hughes. I'm the director of the DC Department of Employment Services. And if DC was officially a state, and we do hope one day that is the case, my role is synonymous with being the Secretary of Labor for the District of Columbia. Everything from labor law enforcement, which includes labor standards, wage and hour, workers' compensation. I oversee to paid family leave, which the district is very proud of, the agency is very proud of, to all of your traditional job training programs. We are a full service state and labor workforce development agency, but we are located here in the District of Columbia.
Thank you. Secretary Slater.
Good morning, and thanks, Jack, and thanks, Mac. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm Bryan Slater. I'm the Secretary of Labor for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and basically I oversee all labor activities, really consisting right now of 4 agencies: the Department of Labor and Industry, which oversees state OSHA, the VOSH office, child labor, employment law, boiler and pressure safety vessel issues, registered apprenticeships, the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation, which oversees and licenses the 89 different non-health, non-medical, non-law enforcement licensed regulated professions and job categories in the Commonwealth. The Virginia Employment Commission, which obviously is the state's unemployment insurance agency, which also has a workforce development component, at least for the next 5 or so months. And actually the new Virginia Department of Workforce Development and Advancement, which is a newly created workforce agency that'll move about a dozen components into the agency and authorize the agency to drive and direct workforce programs across state government, really no matter where they sit or who they report to. And the State Workforce Board goes with that. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Let's see, to set the stage, maybe I'll ask the panelists to provide an overview of the current employment and labor landscape in your respective jurisdictions and any recent developments. And I'll shake up the order a little bit. Dr. Morris-Hughes, I'll start with you.
You know, the district, especially this year, has really benefited from a very healthy labor market. Our unemployment rate post-pandemic is at historic lows, especially in some of the more challenging parts of the city. You know, we still, just like every other jurisdiction, are trying to build a talent pipeline for the high demand occupations that we see in the city, which continue to be information technology, hospitality and tourism, which is a very large industry here in the district, and management and some professional services. Some of the challenges that we're having right now is related to, you know, the post-pandemic return to work. We're still not seeing occupancy rates downtown return back to what they were pre-pandemic. And we know that the world of work has forever changed since the pandemic. We know that there are still, you know, companies that are deciding to, you know, remain virtual, but our, you know, workforce landscape has really been shaped and is being impacted by these trends post-pandemic and folks not returning back to work. And it's a really interesting, you know, discussion on both sides of the debate. You know, I think there's some merit and valid points, but I will tell you, you know, it is really, really shaping our workforce and not just the economy in the District of Columbia, but I think the regional economy as well.
Yep. Thank you. Secretary Slater?
Well, let's see. The current unemployment rate in the Commonwealth is about 2.5%. That's also near a historic low. Our labor participation rate is up to 66.7%. That's the highest it's been since mid-2012. We actually have more people working in Virginia than ever, between 4.5 and 4.6 million. We've had job growth for 16 of the last 19 months, and we've added over 225,000 jobs since Governor Youngkin took office in January of 2022. That's the good news. The bad news is we still have about 245,000 open jobs in Virginia right now, and close to 120,000 of those are open IT type jobs in Northern Virginia alone. And really, for most of my life, we had an employment situation where we basically had 5 people for every 2 open jobs. We now pretty much have 2 people for every 5 open jobs. Some of the recent developments that have gone on is this year we actually were able to pass legislation that establishes the new state workforce agency, which really empowers that agency to drive and direct workforce programs across state government, no matter where they sit. And the agency is going to be setting baselines and metrics for every workforce program in the executive branch, so we can actually start seeing what is working and what isn't, so we can look at scaling up what is working and see if we can either fix what isn't working or move the funding to programs that are. We also passed universal licensing recognition for 85 different regulated professions that will enable professionals from other states with significantly similar requirements and credentials to bypass the additional education and exam processed and get licensed. And, like Maryland, I believe, and I'm not sure if the district did this, but we did away with degree requirements and preferences for 90% of our state civil service jobs.
Thank you.
Sure.
Secretary.
Yes, so like my our sister jurisdictions here, we have record low unemployment. I want to say Maryland has been, if not the lowest in the country, one of the lowest three. Our last monthly rate, and we're going to have a new one coming out shortly, has been 1.7% unemployment. That's a little different, though. I do want to qualify that by saying Maryland's labor force participation rate has not rebounded quite as quickly or as much as the other states on this call. And I was a district resident for about 20 years, so I'm going to definitely refer to DC as a sister state. But we're hovering at about 65.3%, so not quite as strong as Virginia. And a place where we have seen some of those gaps is among younger workers and among women. Now, part of the younger worker phenomenon, of course, is Maryland has very high college enrollment rates. So we understand, and of course, it's a plus to have individuals getting training and education. So that's, we're proud of that and want to support that. But we do think, continuing to support women in terms of how they can return to work post-pandemic, we haven't seen as much of that as we'd like. Fortunately, Maryland will be bringing online a paid family and medical leave program. We've just started the first steps. That is a new law in the state, or relatively new. We've just published our contribution rates for employers. So that's something we want employers to be aware of. And we've seen with the historic studies and what other states have had is that actually those programs have really helped enable women to remain more attached to the workforce, which is what we really want to see, especially given the demographic trends in our state and across the country. Is keeping people attached to the workforce is really important. Just one final thing I'll note is Maryland also accelerated its minimum wage increase to $15 an hour. That was already on the books, but we sort of accelerated the timeline for that to be 2024.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. There's a need for skilled workers and talent impacting all industries and at all levels. I'm just curious what specific programs your jurisdiction offers to businesses that need employees for job training, displacement retraining, my new favorite word, upskilling, and other additional development. And what incentives, if any, do you offer to provide capital to help businesses with those costs? Secretary Slater, I'll start with you.
Okay, great. Some of the programs we've got are our adult and dislocated worker and youth programs under the Workforce Innovation Act that are aligned with delivery at the American Job Centers. We obviously have Wagner Pizer to drive engagement and connection between employers and job seekers. We've got a registered apprenticeship program. We currently have about 11,500 registered apprentices across the Commonwealth, and we're focused on actually doubling that number and actually expanding the registered apprenticeship program, marketing it better, and also looking at how do we create a state apprenticeship program for other work-based learning programs outside of the traditional registered apprenticeships in industry sectors like IT, healthcare, cyber, and other fields that may not actually be a fit for RA. Additionally, we've got our CTE programs and our veterans programs, the V3 and Jobs for Virginia Veterans, to name a few. But like I said, what's most important is that we're establishing baselines and metrics to actually drive activity, to train individuals and engagement by employers. Some of the incentives we've got are the work opportunity tax credit, which is a federal tax credit incentive for businesses hiring individuals from any of about 10 different target groups who have consistently faced significant barriers to employment. The work opportunity tax credit enables targeted employees to gradually move from economic dependency to self-sufficiency. Let's see what else we've got. The Virginia Jobs Investment Program through the Virginia Economic Development Partnership that provides performance-based funding to companies creating new jobs or experiencing technological change to reduce the human resource development costs for new companies, expanding companies, and companies helping them retaining their employees. We've got the Virginia Talent Accelerator Program, which is also delivered by VDP in partnership with the community college system, which provides training and recruitment solutions that are fully customized to a company's unique operations, equipment standards, and culture. All of the program services are provided at no cost to qualified new and expanding companies as an incentive for job creation. And we've got the worker training tax credit, which allows a tax credit equal to 35% of all classroom training costs for eligible workers. And eligible training includes tax credit or for credit or non-credit courses, resulting in the employee receiving a workforce credential or apprenticeship training. It's $500 for a qualified employee a year and $1,000 if considered a non-highly compensated worker.
Fantastic. Secretary Wu.
There. A lot of similar themes to what Secretary Slater talked about. First of all, on registered apprenticeship, that actually absolutely is a place where Maryland is focusing. And I do want to say we're also focusing on youth. And I know that's not an incumbent worker upskilling issue, but we are hearing from every company, we want to get workers earlier in career. We want to get them into our industry and attached to our industry. Maryland, under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, has a requirement that 45% of high schoolers must graduate with a registered apprenticeship connection or an industry recognized credential by 2030, I want to say it is. So we're only at like 6 or 7% now. So that's a big gap we need to fill. So we're really focused on registered apprenticeship and youth apprenticeship, of course. I would also say we have some programs that we think really help address some of employers' needs. Of course, the WIOA programs, but in Maryland, we also have the Earn Maryland program, which is the industry-focused training. Groups of 5 or more employers get together, form partnerships. We support them with funds to make sure we're upskilling workers. I'd say about, of the 20,000 workers we've supported in training over the years of the program, probably 11,000 have been incumbent workers. So employers find that a very valuable asset in terms of supporting incumbent worker training in a way that's a little bit more flexible and targeted than some of the traditional programs. We also, of course, have tax credits similar to Virginia, in particular on the registered apprenticeship side. I think we have a $3,000 per apprentice potential credit that employers can take advantage of to encourage them to adopt apprenticeship as a model. And we're also adopting it in the state because we're facing a lot of similar challenges. And then finally, I'd say we have a couple industry focus areas, of course, cybersecurity, in our tri-state area, that's critical in terms of support for the federal government. Maryland also has a huge investment in the offshore wind industry. We were fortunate to get a $23 million grant from the Federal Department of Commerce. So we have a number of community colleges, skilled trades, businesses where we're partnering there. I expect that EV infrastructure, other areas like that will also be a continued area of investment for the state, and we want to help employers with that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Dr. Morris-Hughes.
Yeah, so I want to be additive to the discussion. We have all of the WIOA Yes We Can funding and investments, from the feds. But a few of the things that we're doing that I think makes the district unique, and I'm going to start. I think I'm going to start first with infrastructure. Before there was a bipartisan infrastructure law, we had the DC Infrastructure Academy. And the DC Infrastructure Academy trains district residents in all of the infrastructure occupations, including clean water, because it is a core belief of ours that clean water is infrastructure, and so is technology. So we've stood up this Infrastructure Academy. It's a unique model where we partner with industry, to do industry-specific occupational skills training for DC residents that are accepted in the program. There is a guaranteed job placement. They have to pass this CAST exam, which is known to be one of the most complicated and difficult utility exams. We have about a 70% passage rate amongst minorities, which is the highest in the country. So we're very proud of that. Every single person that enters a DC job training program gets paid a wage. It is a core belief of ours that you shouldn't have to choose between doing training and improving your life and building a career and having to do something else. And so most of our programs offer this a training wage of $17 an hour, which is the district's minimum wage, which is amongst the highest in the country. We have probably the largest returning citizen program in the country. We've been doing it for 23 years, where we have an emphasis on people who need a second chance. And I'd like to remind everyone, many of us were just one mistake or bad decision away from having a different life. I'm sure if there was social media during the time that any of us were in college, we may have had different outcomes. I see you smiling there, so you all know. But we run a really successful returning citizen program. We have a job placement rate of about 60%. So that means you go through the essential skills. We give every single person who enters the program a work experience. So you get to build experience in the occupation that you want to work in, and we will pay you to do that. And then we partner with industry and employers to get people connected to jobs. We run a very large summer youth employment program. That alone is about a $25 million investment. We hire approximately 15,000 young people during the summer. And we also have a unique set of partnerships with our federal agencies where they're paying young people above minimum wage to work in federal agencies in the summer. Our thought is that we're building the future of public servants and giving them important career experience. The mayor just announced yesterday at the Bloomberg City Lab convening that we have a brand new HBCU apprenticeship program where our pilot year will be bringing in 50 young people who are graduates of HBCUs in the city to work in public service, because we also know that there is a need for more future leaders. And then to support building this talent pipeline, the next generation of talent. We also have a high school youth apprenticeship program, and we've also established what we call a signing day. So just like college athletes get to sign, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance, and they get to sign their offer or their letter, to the commitment letter to go to college. We do the same thing for graduating high school seniors who participate in our program, and they get a job offer. And it's not just in the trades. It's in IT, it's in hospitality, but we should celebrate young people who want to go to work. And we should also celebrate young people who are making a choice for a career in the military as well, and we honor and recognize them. So our local investments are almost double that of what we receive from WIOA, and they're probably our most innovative job training programs that we have.
Thank you. Dr. Morris-Hughes, just to give you a heads up, I'm going to give you a chance to catch your breath. That was a great answer. I'm going to come to you after I introduce the next topic. So interesting, the issue of mental health has taken on more of a focus for me in my career as I've aged and moved along. And that was even before the pandemic. The pandemic has certainly accelerated that dynamic, that issue, as it relates to what I do day to day, and as I take care of our folks at the bank. Mental health and well-being are important topics for both employees and businesses. I'm curious, just what efforts are you engaged with to afford workers to get the resources and time needed for adequate self-care And how are you reaching out to underserved communities, women, parents, to remain, enter, and come back to the workforce? And we've touched on some of those topics, but maybe specifically around mental health.
You know, it's really interesting because I think there's two ways that I want to frame my answer. One is through the paid family leave program, which here in the District of Columbia, we do have a benefit that will allow people to provide and care for themselves. And that could include mental health if it's diagnosed by a doctor. And that will allow people some time to care for themselves. Employers also, understand that, it's a benefit, through the tax or assessment that they pay, that they can offer to their staff as well. So I think, many times time away for treatment and care is super, super important. Additionally, we have a mental health component in our job training programs because we understand that, people come to us in the state that they're already in. It's not that they get the job or they're on the job and then something just develops. I mean, we serve people in the state that they're in. So we actually have behavioral health clinicians that sit on site in some of our training programs and are providing direct services to those job seekers, because we also view it as a responsibility of ours to send a competitive candidate. But a competitive candidate is more than just do they have the skill set? Are they coming to the employer, whole? And treated. And so we want to put together a well-rounded competitive candidate, which is why we have behavioral health staff working with our participants. The other thing I want to add is that the pandemic really showed us the need for additional mental health support, at least in my, and I would probably say for my sister agencies the same. All of us were really frontline economic first responders. We were, and this region really is unique from any other region. We were serving hundreds of thousands of people who were unemployed collectively, and our staff was feeling that burnout. There's some trauma there of answering calls, for people who were threatening to take their lives because they could not provide for their family. So I have invested substantially in my staff's mental and well-being. All of my senior managers have an opportunity to receive an executive coach through George Washington University. My staff also has the ability to access mental health clinicians, during the day. But we had to put a lot of wraparound supports and services for staff because they're on the front line serving the community and businesses as well.
The airlines tell you to put the oxygen mask on your face first before assisting your child.
That's
Absolutely.
Right.
Secretary Wu.
So I'm loving this call because I'm jotting down some notes saying, gosh, we should do that too. These are some really wonderful ideas. It's great to hear the leadership from our sister jurisdictions. Similarly to DC, we do in Maryland have paid sick and safe days. So individuals can use those, for example, for medical appointments, and that could include counseling if they need it. We're bringing online paid family and medical leave, as I mentioned earlier. And something that's important to understand for that in Maryland is there's actually a subsidy. So businesses smaller than 15 employees do not pay the employer side of the contribution. And we also allow self-employed individuals to buy into that system. So those are some, types of smaller businesses or entrepreneurs who may not typically be covered under these safety nets. They are covered in Maryland law. And then I'd also say, I think we also see, and this is, a pre-pandemic phenomenon, the intersection with substance abuse and mental health and well-being, and sort of some of the strains that puts on workers and their families, as well as impairing individuals' ability to work productively. In Maryland, we were fortunate to get a grant from the federal government, and we have an opioid workforce innovation fund. We have some pilots around the state. Our department also manages correctional education in the state, so we've invested a lot there, and even in behind the fence peer recovery specialists, and really finding the value in how peer counseling can really be of assistance and help individuals recover, be successful, get prepared to transition back to civilian life and hopefully workforce. And that, it feels like to us, that's a really critical part, a piece of the puzzle to make sure that we're addressing the mental and physical health needs of our workforce.
Yeah, thanks. Then Secretary Slater.
Yeah, thanks. I think we all know that mental health and substance abuse issues, are significant barriers to entry into the workforce. And we've actually been working with my counterpart, Secretary of Health and Human Resources, to develop the Right Help Right Now program to actually better serve Virginians with mental health and substance abuse issues. We'll be able to expand capacity through the behavioral health system, including pre-crisis prevention services, crisis services, and post-crisis recovery and support services by expanding the use of community-based care, increasing access to telebehavioral health, and increasing school-based support for students. We're also going to engage directly on substance use disorders and overdose by developing better mobile treatment and crisis response, investing in additional funding to wage the war on fentanyl overdoses and reduce barriers to recovery and reentry. We're also working to create a pipeline of professionals who can help people by expanding our recruitment strategies, supporting targeted increases in rates and compensation, and providing funds to educate new psychiatrists, psychiatric nurse practitioners, and other behavioral health workers. We're also looking at licensing reform to really, not unlike universal licensing recognition, to streamline the process for out-of-state qualified workers and professionals to get them here quicker.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Gosh, I'm trying to think of a panel that I've attended or participated in that hasn't talked about artificial intelligence. It's probably 2021. So probably time we talk about AI. More and more in the front of everybody's mind, and particularly around the workplace and how companies are using it to screen for new employees, track projects, automated marketing programs, in some cases replacing workers. So just love for you to share just what your relationship is with AI, what you're doing to encourage or dissuade the use as it relates to workforce and talent. Secretary Wu, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I will say Maryland has not yet issued a formal policy or position on this, so I don't want to get out. Of course, that is something the state is working on, and we have a number of legislators who are very interested in the topic, and we are in active conversation with them. I do happen to have come from the tech industry. My job prior to this January, when I came to the state, was I was the head of public policy for Microsoft and U.S. government affairs. So I have thought about it a lot. I would say just a couple things here that, I think the state and state government, we're facing a lot of the same questions and concerns that individuals in private industry are. And of course, we have to think about bias, fairness, privacy, security, all the key issues that have been identified through federal government and NIST and other agencies and the other commissions work on this. I think for states in particular, we also want to think about we have to do a lot. There are a lot of services that we've all just talked about that our departments have to provide, and we are often doing more with less. So thinking about how tools like automation or AI can be useful, making sure, of course, they're adhering with basic principles to safeguard the residents of our states is really important. But there's a lot of exciting potential here to support state workers and our work and use these tools in a way that can help us serve our constituents even better.
Dr. Morris-Hughes.
Okay, Max. So this is I'm really excited about this question. So I am year 6 into this role. now I have a little agency, right? So now I get to have some fun. I survived the pandemic barely. When we launched paid family leave, no one said we can do it. We generated over $400 million in revenue to launch the program. So I've checked the boxes and I've kind of proved what we can do, and now I get to have fun. We have fully embraced AI at our state workforce agency. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of bias in technology. Everybody knows, so this is not going to be a jaw-dropping secret, a shocker, that our unemployment insurance systems across the country are outdated. And when we saw that people were applying for unemployment, that multi-generations living in the same household applying for unemployment, they're being flagged for fraud, but they were not fraudsters. We knew we had a problem on our hand. Most of these folks are low income, we're low income and come from communities of color. So, this idea I had with AI and technology really was birthed out of what we experienced in the pandemic. The feds had given us some money for these equity grants, and that was what got the ball rolling. I just was briefed yesterday, and we'll probably put out a press release sometime in the middle of November of a company that we have partnered with, A-Fold, that uses AI technology to help remove bias from resumes of candidates that we are trying to get jobs. I believe, and I want my sister jurisdictions and states to know that they have my full support, but I believe it is my job to put the most competitive candidate to get any job in the region, because I'm competitive like that. And so we saw, though, that the candidates, even the most competitive candidates, had resumes. They had the job skills. I can get them, they knock out the interview, but I couldn't get them in the door, right? And I'm talking about 30,000, 40,000 people here, because they didn't have resumes that really highlighted their lived experience, that translated into occupational skills or job skills. They had resumes that had cultural markers, and they were being screened out. So we've partnered with this company, AI. They've built this application for us where you put in a set of life experiences, you take your old resume, you take trainings that you've had, and it generates the most awesome resume for you. It pulls jobs from the National Labor Exchange and says there, gives a likelihood and a percentage of, whether or not the candidate can get an interview. And we know historically women in low income communities and people of color don't necessarily apply for jobs that's at their same skill set. They typically apply below, but it pulls all of those jobs. It gives them the likelihood of getting a interview. It uses the language that recruiters are using and other systems, HR systems that use AI. And it really puts together a package, a resume, a LinkedIn profile. And there has been success in a few other jurisdictions with this application, and it uses AI technology. So I just saw the DC application yesterday. I'm super excited about it. We'll do a press release in the middle of November, and we're going to launch it as a big talent initiative. And I want my fellow secretaries to know that I'll be looking for jobs in your region too, and sending candidates there as well. But we have fully embraced it, and we're using it to drive AI to drive equity here in the District of Columbia.
Thank you. May I ask you to tell me the company again that you've partnered with?
It's called A-Fold. It's AIGHFOLD.
Okay,
and if that's not the right spelling, because spelling is not my thing, I will make sure we get you the right spelling.
Close enough. Thank you. Secretary Slater, AI.
Yes. Governor Youngkin issued an executive directive on September 20th, calling for the development of 4 standards and guidelines for Virginia state government to implement AI. And the 4 areas are legal, IT, policy, and education, K through 12. In addition, our Secretary of Education is working with Virginia Economic Development Partnership and my office on a report to the governor examining the workforce development needs to ensure our students are prepared for their careers in relation to AI. And we're just getting started on this. But I think it is critically important that we set the boundaries and everything on what we are going to use AI for and what we are not going to allow AI to be used for now, instead of dealing with the consequences, unintended consequences of problems that it may create moving forward. I think it's going to be a great tool, but I think it's really important that we lay the ground rules now on how we are going to use it and how we're not going to use it.
Yep, great. Looking at our time, I think we have time for one more topic before we turn this over to questions from the audience. Interested to know how your departments are collaborating with K through 12 higher education institutions to better equip students for meaningful career opportunities in the future. And again, we've some of that conversation around maybe just specifics. Secretary Slater, I'll start with you.
I think, obviously K through 12 and higher ed systems are key in this. And on the K through 12 front, we're exploring opportunities to allow high school students to earn industry recognized credentials so they can actually graduate with a diploma and a certification of a specific skill. Governor has said he wants to see every high school graduate graduate with a credential. We're also exploring ways to work with school systems to expose students, particularly middle school students, to different career opportunities starting as early as 6th grade. The Henrico County Public School Systems and the United Way of Southwest Virginia are both establishing career workforce centers that allow students the opportunity to visit with industrial professionals and get practical hands-on experience and learn more about career options. We funded a grant earlier this year, which allows for an entity to take students and put them on a bus and take them to workplaces all across Hampton Roads and let them be able to see what industrial job sites are like, what manufacturing job sites are like, and the fact that they're not some sort of 19th century factory. They're more equivalent to clean rooms in a lot of cases, and are all mechanized and the robotics automation that's needed there. For higher ed, we're working to make sure that the educational programs better align with the needs of businesses and industries when it comes to things like curriculum development, training programs, and developing pipelines to career opportunities. We've said 2 things, repeatedly. It's train to businesses' needs. Reach out to business and ask them. Business is not shy. They'll tell you exactly what they need and don't need, and involve businesses directly in curriculum development. So there's no miss when it comes to what business needs and what we're actually training to. We're also exploring the idea of career navigators for Virginia's 23 community colleges that'll engage with in-demand industry stakeholders in the specific regions to better connect students with job opportunities. One of the things that we've been really focusing on is it's not enough to just train people anymore. We've got to work on placing people, and success is people trained, people placed, and retention in that job. Training somebody as a welder and 6 months later they're employed at McDonald's is not a success story. So we want to identify things like that. And we're also boosting our efforts to increase internships, apprenticeships, and other work-based learning opportunities to really give students real-world experience and retain the talent and retain the talent pipeline in Virginia. We're using data analytics to analyze educational and workforce training resources to help fill the top in-demand jobs all across the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Secretary Wu.
Sure. Yeah, so I think similar strategies youth apprenticeship for sure. And I want to give credit, of course, to the prior administration that also was a strong proponent of this as well in Maryland. You know, when we started up the program, I want to say 8 or 9 years ago, we had a couple dozen high schoolers in apprenticeships. Today, every county school district has an apprenticeship program with the state of Maryland that's recognized. And also, I think we have 600 high schoolers like right now who are in apprenticeships. And we're going to increase that number a lot. As I said, we've got that 45% goal, so we're going to try to meet it. Another key piece of our focus in Maryland, again, under the Blueprint for Maryland's Futures umbrella, is career counseling, because we, as Secretary Slater said, we understand a lot of younger people just do not know what is out there, right? And then you revert to what your parents know, right? That's how we do not have greater equity in the state, is because people don't even know the possibilities. And with technology and AI coming on, like nobody's parent, hardly anyone's parent is an AI or technology guru. So we need to help young people understand what's out there in the skilled trades, advanced manufacturing, clean energy, IT, healthcare, all these huge fields for our state economy. And so we actually, under the Blueprint, have funding, and the local workforce areas are supporting career counselors in high schools all across the state. Every high school will have an assigned career counselor, and those individuals will also be supporting middle schoolers and making that connection with industry. So I think we really want to encourage employers to partner with their schools. I know I've heard time and time again frustration from employers that they're not sure how they can reach those young people. Well, we've got, you know, counselors in place. Let's make sure those our students are actually getting to see real workplaces, that individuals with real life work experience are coming into school and talking with them and getting students fired up about the potential.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Morris-Hughes.
Yeah, you know, I touched on it a bit already, but I think our strongest connection is our summer youth employment program. And we're in year 40. I think we're going to go into year 45 of doing the summer youth employment program, and with such a significant investment, like I said, close to $25 million. You know, it is the hallmark program for young people in DC, and it directly connects the K-12 sector, or K-12 to workforce. This past summer, I launched a brand new program, and it's a summer career exploratory camp, where we now have young people as young as 8 and 9 for 1 week, getting introductory work skills and earning $125. And so, you know, we want to build the next generation of our workforce. And I think we've got to be super intentional of how we connect with the education sector. And we've got to instill some of those good old values around work. I think that's missing. I see generations, you know, a couple of generations that are coming in now and receiving services who are missing some of those values of work. And so we're trying to start young and build that. We're also trying to build interest in sectors like healthcare and information technology and the trades. There is a misconception around occupation and trades. You can have a phenomenal career in the trades, in utilities. And so we're doing that groundwork now by partnering with education, but the entry point, I would say, is through the summer. One other program I forgot to mention is that, and it just started October 2nd, it's our high school internship program, where young people, I think they make $9 or $10 an hour. They work like 10 hours a week. We've started with 1,000 young people. I have more employers than I actually have participant slots available. We have lots of employers that are calling us, that it resonates with them, giving high school students an opportunity to learn and work. And so we will look at expanding that program. But those are the meaningful ways that we're connecting with the K-12 education sector.
No, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the question and answer portion of our panel now. And we've got a great question, which is posed by Robert Hull from Nova Community College. It's a great question because it's a great question, but I think it's on everybody's mind, and that is that there's fear that the federal government will shut down at November 17th. Continuing resolution expires. What impact would that have on the labor market in each of your jurisdictions? And I may just throw it out to the panel. Just whoever wants to jump in, please do.
I mean, there will be, with the federal government being one of the largest industries and sectors here in DC, that we will see an impact residually also to our local economy and businesses. When people are not at work, they're not spending, money locally. And so we do expect there to be an impact. We are prepared, however, should there be a government shutdown, to support, anyone who qualifies for unemployment insurance benefits. But we do anticipate that there will be an impact, not just to the workforce, but to our local economy here in DC.
I think the bigger question too is, if there's a shutdown, the big question is how long does it last? If it's like some of the previous shutdowns and it's a few days, at least for us, the impact will be minimal. If it's a longer shutdown and were to drag on for several weeks, that's when it starts to begin to have a bigger impact, because it doesn't not only impacts the federal employees in the Commonwealth, but all of the contractors and the ancillary businesses that depend on that work and interactions with the Commonwealth. So I for one, we are, a few weeks ago, we were, all three of us were on a call with the Department of Labor, prepping for a shutdown and keeping our fingers crossed that it didn't happen. And my guess is, as we get closer to the 17th, we're going to be in that same situation again, but we want to keep our fingers crossed that it doesn't happen. I know when I was at the U.S. Department of Labor, we had 3 or 4 what I would say close calls to where we got close to a shutdown, but thankfully didn't have them. In addition to one we did have. But yeah, I think it really is going to depend on how long it lasts, if it happens.
I'll just add that, of course, each of our jurisdictions, massive potential impact, especially with so many federal employees and so many federal contractor employees. In Maryland, in addition to unemployment insurance, we do have a loan program that our legislature directed us to set up after the last prolonged shutdown for accepted employees who are working but not getting paid. But even that has limits, right? And I think that's, unemployment insurance, retroactive pay, it will help some individuals, but particularly in a longer shutdown, there are some individuals who are going to fall through the cracks, right? You're part-time or your contractor employer for whatever reason, or your active duty military. So for whatever reason, you might not be covered by existing programs, and you might not get that income back. So that inevitably, as Secretary Slater said, in a longer or deeper shutdown, or I don't think we've had one government-wide in quite some time. So that's, that's a concern. If it does get to that scope, of course it will have an impact. But like my colleague said, we're prepared at the state. We're doing our job to be as ready as we can to provide support to Maryland workers and businesses, but we can't deny it's a significant part of our economy.
Sure. It's almost like a drill that everybody's ready for. Right. We've got 5 minutes left, and Chris, you'll be upset that somebody usurped the process of using the chat. I got a text message, but I think it's a good topic to close with. Between the 3 jurisdictions, has there been collaboration amongst each of your departments around labor issues, and what potential areas of continuing cooperation are there between the 3 jurisdictions? Again, all of them.
Well, I'll jump in and start. It's like we obviously all 3 collaborate on WMATA and MWA issues because they're multi-jurisdictional, and just because one's in one place, it still serves the entire region. But I think in addition to those two, the interactions that we have working with each other in prepping for instance, government shutdown, that impacts us all. It doesn't stop at the Virginia line or the Maryland line or the DC line, because people just like you are constantly traveling. I mean, this morning you crossed 3 jurisdictions, and so I think we all look at it that way. But there are obviously a lot more potential for other areas to collaborate together too, and we look forward to those.
And I'd like to say,
go ahead, Katie.
oh, just that I think our staffs collaborate pretty frequently. I know that my team, especially on the unemployment insurance side, all of the, I think we all have, interstate coordinators that are working with the state. So I think there is some pretty good, healthy collaboration. And then on the paid family leave side, we've been really, talking a lot with Maryland as well, and happy to have them as part of the paid family leave state. So I think there is some healthy collaboration. And of course, I look forward to more.
Well, as I said earlier, I clearly have a lot of hearing a lot of exciting ideas from some of my sister jurisdictions. So would love to continue to learn from you all. We do collaborate a lot on unemployment insurance, but also areas like reciprocal licensing, which I think is very important for businesses and entrepreneurs. That's an important area. But as the director said, we have a shared interest in having a strong and prepared workforce and supporting our businesses throughout the region to make sure they can have the talent they need to grow and compete. So, anything we can do, and suggestions certainly from folks on this call or other stakeholders about how we can make that easier and smoother for the consumers and businesses we serve. Very open to it, because we do have that shared interest. A little friendly competition here and there too, but overall, we are better served by collaborating. So.
Yeah. Great. Well, we've reached that time. I want to thank our panelists, Secretary Wu, Secretary Slater, Dr. Morris-Hughes. I want to thank you for your time. We know that's precious. Even in preparing for this, that was evident that you all are on very tight schedules. Also really appreciate your thoughtfulness and thoroughness as well. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Jack McDougall, who is President and CEO of Greater Washington Board of Trade.
Great, thanks, Mac. Yeah, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And Secretary Wu, Secretary Slater, and Director Morris-Hughes. That was a great conversation and really insightful. A lot of opportunities in this region moving forward. So we look forward to continuing working with you. I know Secretary Slater, we've been working with you a lot, and look forward to continuing that, as well as everyone else. And Mac, thanks for moderating this. Agreed, a lot of really good insights for us in the business community, as well as across the jurisdictions. Employers and workers don't really live based on jurisdictional boundaries. So it's really important that we think about this in a collaborative regional way. Again, I do want to thank our sponsors today, our presenting sponsor, First National Bank, along with our supporting sponsors, Comcast, Fox Rothschilds, Giant Food, GS Proctor & Associates, Holland & Knight, McGuire Woods Consulting, MGM National Harbor, and Uber for making this happen. And our next policy leadership series discussion will be on October 24th with Maryland Senate President Ferguson and Virginia Senate President Pro Tempore Lucas. So please join us for that. And thank you again, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.